On August 2nd, 1993, the sun rose over Savona, New York, casting a gentle golden light over the quiet streets. It was the kind of summer morning that seemed to promise nothing but peace and routine. A day like any other in this close-knit rural community, where neighbors greeted each other by name and children played freely on the sidewalks. That morning, 4-year-old Derek Roby, full of excitement and pride, set out for summer camp. For the first time, his parents allowed him to walk the short distance alone, a small but significant step toward independence. Derek's red hair caught the sunlight as he made his way down the familiar street, his backpack bouncing with each step. But he never arrived at camp. When Derek failed to show up, the sense of calm that had defined Savona was shattered in an instant. The playgrounds, once filled with laughter, now stood eerily silent, and a heavy sense of dread settled over the town. Panic spread quickly. Neighbors, friends, and family members fanned out across the area, calling Derek's name with growing desperation. The searchers combed through backyards, fields, and wooded lots, refusing to believe that something terrible could happen here. Hours later, the unimaginable became reality. Derek's small body was discovered in a patch of nearby woods. He had been lured off the path, then brutally strangled and bludgeoned. The innocence of the town was lost in that moment, replaced by shock and grief. The community was left reeling. How could such a horrific act happen to one of their own, especially to a child so young and full of promise? The question echoed through every home and heart. Fear quickly replaced the comfort that had defined small-town life. Parents clung to their children, holding them a little tighter, suddenly aware that the world was not as safe as they had believed. The sense of security that had once been taken for granted was gone. Police launched an intensive investigation, searching for suspects and clues. At first, suspicion fell on outsiders. Strangers passing through, drifters, anyone who didn't belong. The idea that someone from within their own community could be responsible was too terrifying to accept. Whispers of fear and suspicion spread among the townspeople. Neighbors eyed each other with uncertainty, struggling to reconcile the horror with the familiar faces around them. The possibility that the killer might be one of their own was almost unthinkable. News of the crime quickly spread beyond Savona. National media descended on the town, broadcasting the tragedy to millions. The brutality of Derek's murder shocked the nation and left the community exposed, its pain and fear on display for all to see. In the days that followed, the people of Savona gathered in churches and at candlelight vigils, searching for comfort and answers. The question haunted everyone: what kind of person could commit such an act against an innocent child? The tragedy forced the nation to confront uncomfortable questions about the origins of evil. Was it something a person was born with, or something that could be created by circumstance and environment? Experts and community members alike debated: was the killer born a monster, or made into one by forces beyond their control? The search for answers would grip the town and the country for months to come. For Savona, the events of that summer marked the end of innocence. The memory of Derek Roby would forever haunt the town, a reminder of how quickly a peaceful morning can turn into a nightmare, and how a single act can change a community forever. Days passed with no answers, and fear gripped Savona. The once peaceful streets now felt haunted by suspicion and dread. Parents kept their children close, and neighbors eyed each other with unease, wondering if the person responsible could be someone they knew. The sense of safety that had defined the town was shattered, replaced by a chilling uncertainty that seeped into every conversation and every quiet moment. Then, a local family came forward. Their 13-year-old son, Eric Smith, was acting strangely. He had become withdrawn, his behavior shifting in ways that alarmed his parents. He seemed distracted, lost in thought, and avoided eye contact. The family struggled to make sense of his mood swings, torn between concern and denial. One evening, Eric asked his mother unsettling questions about what would happen if a child committed murder. The words hung in the air, heavy and incomprehensible. His mother was stunned, unsure whether to dismiss it as a morbid curiosity or to fear something far worse. The question gnawed at her, refusing to be forgotten. Eric's grandfather, too, heard a confession. Eric spoke of things no child should know, but the old man dismissed it as fantasy, a product of a troubled imagination. He couldn't believe his grandson was capable of such horror, and so he said nothing, hoping it was all just a bad dream. But the family's unease grew too great to ignore. Eventually, they contacted the police, and Eric was brought in for questioning. The small town watched in disbelief as the boy was led away, the reality of the situation beginning to dawn on everyone. At first, Eric denied everything, insisting he knew nothing about Derek Roby's death. But as the hours passed, his composure began to crack. The pressure of the interrogation, the weight of his secret, and the presence of his mother all combined to break through his defenses. With his mother by his side, Eric finally confessed in chilling detail to killing Derek Roby. He described the events with a calmness that unsettled even the most seasoned detectives. The room fell silent as the truth emerged, each word painting a picture of a tragedy no one could have imagined. The revelation stunned the town. The killer was a child from their own community. People gathered in disbelief, struggling to process the news. The sense of betrayal was profound. The idea that such violence could come from within their midst was almost too much to bear. The narrative shifted overnight. No longer was the town searching for a faceless monster. Now, they were forced to reckon with the unimaginable, a child as the perpetrator. Conversations in coffee shops and living rooms turned to shock, sorrow, and confusion. The community was left grappling with questions that had no easy answers. How could a child commit such cruelty? The question echoed through Savona, haunting parents and teachers alike. Was it something in the boy's upbringing, or was there a darkness no one had seen? The town's collective soul searched for meaning in the senseless. Eric Smith was charged with second-degree murder. The legal process began, but it was clear this would be no ordinary trial. The case drew attention from across the nation as people everywhere tried to understand how such a tragedy could occur. His trial became a national focal point, raising difficult questions about juvenile justice, mental health, and the capacity for evil in the very young. Reporters flocked to the courthouse, and the eyes of the country turned to Savona. The prosecution painted Eric as a remorseless killer, arguing that his actions were deliberate and calculated. They described the crime in stark detail, determined to see justice served for Derek Roby and his grieving family. The defense, however, argued that Eric was a deeply troubled child, shaped by bullying, isolation, and emotional pain. They pleaded for understanding, insisting that he was not pure evil, but a boy in desperate need of help. The case forced the country to debate the nature of culpability in children. Was Eric fully responsible for his actions, or was he a product of circumstances beyond his control? The community and the nation wrestled with these questions, searching for answers in a sea of uncertainty. Was Eric a cold-blooded murderer or a victim himself? The trial became a mirror, reflecting society's deepest fears and doubts about childhood, innocence, and the capacity for violence. The trial would test the limits of justice and understanding, leaving a lasting mark on all who witnessed it. To truly understand the crime that would later shock a community, we must first look closely at Eric Smith himself, the boy at the center of it all. His story is not just about a single act, but about a childhood shaped by pain, isolation, and neglect. Eric was instantly recognizable, marked by his bright red hair, thick glasses, and a face full of freckles. These features, so unique, made him stand out in a way that was both unmistakable and, for him, unfortunate. In the eyes of his classmates, he was different, an easy target for ridicule and cruelty. Day after day, Eric endured relentless teasing and physical torment at school. The bullying was not just occasional, it was a constant presence in his life, chipping away at his self-esteem and sense of safety. He was mocked for his appearance, his voice, and even the way he walked. Home offered little refuge. Eric's family life was marked by instability, and there were reports of emotional and even physical abuse. The place that should have been his sanctuary was instead another source of pain and confusion. He was isolated, caught between the cruelty he faced at school and the turmoil that awaited him at home. With nowhere to turn, Eric became increasingly withdrawn, spending hours alone, lost in his own thoughts. The constant bullying left him feeling powerless and angry. He struggled to express his emotions in healthy ways, and the frustration built up inside him like a storm with no outlet. Eric was small for his age, physically undersized compared to his peers. This only made him more vulnerable, reinforcing his role as a victim and deepening his sense of helplessness. His world felt hostile and unforgiving. Eric often felt trapped, insignificant, and invisible, his pain unnoticed by those around him. He longed for acceptance, but found only rejection. Over time, troubling signs began to emerge. Eric developed behavioral problems, showing explosive anger and a growing fascination with violence. He would break his own toys in fits of rage, and his drawings became increasingly dark and disturbing. These were clear red flags, but in a small rural town in the early 1990s, resources for mental health and intervention were scarce. The warning signs went largely unnoticed, or were dismissed as just boys being boys. Eric was a child in deep distress, his suffering invisible to teachers, neighbors, and even his own family. He slipped through the cracks, his pain hidden behind a quiet exterior. The pressure inside him continued to build day after day, until it finally erupted in a moment of violence that no one saw coming. Eric's story is a stark warning about the consequences of unchecked suffering and the dangers of ignoring the signs of a child in crisis. No one recognized the depth of his struggle. No one reached out in time. By the time the truth was revealed, it was already too late to help. The tragedy that unfolded was not just Derek's, but Eric's as well. A heartbreaking reminder of what can happen when a child's pain goes unseen and unaddressed. Eric Smith's trial brought psychology into the spotlight. The defense argued he suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, triggered by years of bullying and abuse. They claimed he lost control, acting out of rage rather than malice. The prosecution countered that Eric's actions were deliberate and calculated. He lured Derek away, denied involvement, and asked probing questions, signs of awareness. The jury had to decide, was Eric a victim of mental illness or a cold-blooded killer? They found him guilty of second-degree murder, acknowledging impaired judgment, but not absolving him. Eric was sentenced to 9 years to life. His fate would be decided by parole boards in the decades to come. The case reignited the age-old debate, is evil born or made? Some argue genetics and brain structure can predispose people to violence. If Eric was born with these traits, was he destined for darkness? Yet there's no single evil gene. Biology alone can't explain everything. The nature argument offers comfort, but may oversimplify a complex reality. The nurture side argues that evil is made, not born. Eric's life was shaped by relentless bullying and abuse. His violence was a twisted attempt to reclaim power after years of victimization. Studies show childhood trauma increases the risk of future violence. Eric's story fits this pattern. A child failed by those around him. If evil is made, it can be prevented with intervention and support. The tragedy is a call to protect vulnerable children before it's too late. For years, Eric Smith's story was told by others. At parole hearings, he finally spoke for himself. He admitted his rage was redirected pain from years of bullying. Derek Roby was an innocent victim of Eric's accumulated anger. Eric expressed remorse and a desire to help others avoid his path. Some saw genuine change, others saw manipulation. After 10 parole denials, Eric was released in 2021. His freedom reignited debate. Can someone truly be rehabilitated after such a crime? For Derek Roby's parents, the pain never faded. Their son's murder left a permanent void. They attended every parole hearing, opposing Eric's release. For them, the debate over nature and nurture was irrelevant. Justice for Derek was all that mattered. The Robys became advocates, pushing for changes to protect other families. Eric's release in 2022 was devastating for them. They saw it as a failure of justice. Their grief is a reminder of the real, lasting cost of violence. Behind every headline is a family forever changed. The Eric Smith case leaves us with uneasy questions. Was he born with darkness, or did his environment create it? Nature may have loaded the gun, but nurture pulled the trigger. The story urges us to support troubled youth and prevent future tragedies. Eric's release asks us to believe in rehabilitation, even as doubt lingers. The case reveals the fragility of innocence and the complexity of evil. There are no easy answers, only the challenge to do better. Subscribe for more stories exploring the depths of the human condition.